3, 2, 1.
Racing World is presented by Race Control Magazine. And a very warm welcome to you all. This is Racing World. I'm Darcy Watergrave. That's Bob McMurray. And that dude over there is David Turner. We've got plenty to talk about on this edition of the program, and we encourage you to subscribe, to like wherever you're looking. It really helps us move this whole program forward. Of course, YouTube is the way to go if you want to see our pretty faces. Otherwise, you're looking at Spotify, Anchor FM, or Radio Public. So again, like or subscribe so we can carry on doing what we love. Welcome to the round table, gentlemen. Great to see you all here. I suppose we'll kick things off with the fun and games at one of the most beautiful racetracks that I've never been to, but I know you have, Bob McMurray. Formula One at Mugello. We will speak IndyCar later on in the piece, but the Formula One at Mugello, at a celebration of Ferrari. I'm sorry, I had to get that in there. Yeah. Well, I might add that. Now, they were actually a blood red car, weren't they? It was actually...
Well, what colour was it? Maroon?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. It kept disappearing all the time, not unlike their fortunes this season.
It was some leftover paint they had from a few years back.
That's all they could afford. But
I really don't know what to say after that race, or those races, because people are saying it was 3 races in one. The one thing I will say is, apart from everything else, after the second red flag in the second race, which will be the 4th race, because I'm counting Monza as well. No, that would be the 3rd race. Or was that the 3rd race after the first? Anyway, counting Monza as well, all I could think of was split ends. I see red, I see red, I see red. Red flags all over the place, which you can't really criticise them for pulling red flags. But what a bizarre race. A couple of races, in fact. What a bizarre place to, bizarre effort by all sorts of people.
Well, it made perfect sense to have red flags everywhere because, again, celebrating Ferrari and they're red. They did it deliberately. They wanted it, but they had no tifosi there, so they had to work out a way of waving red flags somehow.
Yeah, but wasn't it a staggering event generally? Go to the track, first of all. It is a beautiful track. It's absolutely beautiful. And like Spa, it doesn't, the TV pictures don't really do it credit on the amount of elevation change and all that sort of thing. Just look at the last shot when they're coming around the last bend, coming onto the straight. It's almost like an oval when they come around that long bend with the sort of banked bend. And the speed of it, I was staggered to realise that it was the 3rd fastest track on the Formula One calendar after Monza and Silverstone, which, when you think of all those bends in it, geez, it must have been tough, to say the least. 5 Gs pulling around the corner, for goodness sakes.
I think the neat thing, too, was, in the support races, F2 and F3, was cars were going 5 or 6 wide into that first turn, and so there's plenty of width.
They didn't always come out 5 or 6 wide, did they?
No, but it made for, just such a visual spectacle as well. It's really good.
Now, you've been there. I've never been lucky enough to cast my shadow at Mugello. I was trying to work out, you mentioned the elevation of that track, and I was putting myself in positions, trying to work out how steep this actually is and what the drop is actually like from the top down to the bottom. I was trying to compare it with Spa-Francorchamps because they look similar. But what is the drop like? How big is the elevation?
From top to bottom is not as high. Yeah. And it's not as steep in places, but it's gradual climb all the way up and a gradual climb all the way down. But there are some bits, and I've been talking about the sort of chicane out the back, that all of a sudden it's a bit steep and it's the fastest part of the track. So don't forget this is a Ferrari-owned track. It's where they do a lot of testing of their cars, or they used to, before it was banned from testing on other tracks than your own track, but they still go there now and again with older cars to test, and it is a very popular track with motorcycles. The motorbike boys, Moto GP, they love it, absolutely love it. So, yeah, I can't give you an exact figure about the elevation. I just know that you can't get from what's called the base, the pit lane, and then look up the hill where all the trucks are parked, and you're looking probably 30, 40 metres higher, at least, I would say. So you've got to get there and get back down somehow or other.
Mark of a great racetrack, elevation.
Of course. Really it's one of the biggest things.
Doesn't it say how good Italy is in terms of the number of tracks it has of that type of standard as well? It's phenomenal when you compare it with, Spa, with Monza and Imola and places like that. There's a huge pedigree there, isn't there?
Going to Imola in a couple of races' time. Next one is Sochi, and then it's back to Imola. But there's other ones all the way down through.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Vallelunga, there's which is at Rome. There's Ennepagusa, which is in Sicily. They're all characterful. Ennepagusa actually is just a circle around a poisonous lake. But anyway, that was a good place to go. But yeah, I agree. The race itself, I don't know. What did you think? You saw it. I just shook my head half the time, and I was just thinking, I don't know where this is going.
I like all the restarts and how it was a battle between the two Mercedes as who's actually going to get off the line and what was the dominant position, either inside or out. Of course, that got turned on its head by the time they got to their fifth or sixth restart. I'm being over the top there, but I thought that debate at the top was good. But that big crash, when you look at that from the very end and you watch the explosion of debris of tyres of carbon fibre, it was before the race had actually started. They already exploded in the background. That's premature.
But there's all sorts of blame going on, mainly from the drivers at the back who were involved in it. So take it from the front. As has been said a dozen times, Valtteri Bottas did nothing wrong. His whole reason is to get himself the most advantageous position without breaking the rules. And by going as slowly as you can, it breaks the toe from people behind. They can't actually get past you. Didn't necessarily work with him, but anyway. But so you can't blame him at all. And the guys at the very back, you can't really blame the guys at the very back because they can see the guys in front of them going fast. Who was to blame, I think, is if you look at it as a motorway shunt, who is to blame in a motorway nose to tail? It's the guy behind. So it's those guys' responsibility, whoever started suddenly backing off after accelerating, that have to take the responsibility for it. It's not the responsibility of the safety car. It's not the responsibility of the marshals or the officials. It's not the responsibility of Bottas. It's the people in the middle who are race drivers, allegedly the best in the world, who had the shunt.
Bottas was very smart the way he went about that because there are rules in place and he didn't transgress any of those rulings. He just used it to the best of his benefit. And then it was behind where a bit of white line fever, I suppose, got into the action there. We're going to get around. I don't quite understand how these drivers think that in the space of a one corner they're going to alter the outcome of the race short of finishing the race. Well, and that's all they achieve.
Yeah, but the old story is you make most of your passing manoeuvres at the start of a race.
You're crashing into manoeuvres. You're passing manoeuvres. They're two very distinctly different things.
Make the most crashes as well. I mean, in the first start, the turn, the end of turn one, going up into turn two, when Verstappen was taken out of it, although he said he was going to retire anyway because the engine had lost power or something.
Well, it plainly did. You see the start of that car. He just stalled. Well, he didn't stall physically, but he was like stuck in a swamp when everyone shot past him.
Yeah, so. They still haven't really released the reason for that. And then Gasly got involved and Raikkonen was involved and all sorts of people. So it's a shame that they were involved in that shunt. But it is a wonderful track there, but doesn't it narrow down on that little bit so quickly? I think it did anyway. And poor old Carlos Sainz was turned around as well. Vettel ran over his wing. I mean, all sorts of things were happening.
So we had two reds and two reds, and how many yellows?
3 safety cars.
Was it 3 safety cars? There was a lot of periods sitting
2 reds,
behind,
3 safety
waiting.
Cars,
But if you look at some of the positives from the weekend, because there are positives, Alex Albon on the podium, his first time on the podium, and
great positive for him.
Couldn't have happened at a better time, really, with all these other rumours going on about maybe he'll go back and Gasly will come back, and a bit sick of that whole Red Bull thing. And it's very cruel on drivers, so for him to do that is a big morale boost for his own.
But you climb into bed with Red Bull, you expect that. It's not like you don't know. You're always constantly looking behind you. That's a paranoid state. That's the way Red Bull operate, and they reckon they're going to get the best out of their drivers by providing that pressure. Has it worked so far?
At times.
It mixes a lot of people
from time to time.
Max Verstappen in the first place.
Well, there's that stat.
He went into that team as a junior.
Yes.
And Ricciardo.
The machine works in terms of driver cultivation, but some of the other teams are onto that game now as well in terms of driver development. Ferrari particularly with Marcus Armstrong and a whole team of people. But I just thought it was good that Alex finally got a legitimate podium and he earned it.
Do you know, the worst thing is I read afterwards that so many people have said, but he wouldn't have been on the podium if Max Verstappen was there. He wouldn't have been on the podium if
Max needed to be there.
Some of those cars didn't have to pull out of science. What a lot of rubbish. You start the race and you finish the race, and your position at the end of the race is what it is. Yeah. Not just because somebody else had a misfortune or not. He still had to drive.
Well, we're not talking supercars here. We're not talking 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 races that you've got to work out your tyres, and suddenly you get this artificial situation. We have a winner that really shouldn't have won. It's the nature of motorsport.
And he didn't just tour around. He overtook people.
In order to finish first.
Yeah, right. First
it's true, and that's the nature of it, And he got there and he got to the end. I'm sure that Ricciardo's not entirely happy about that. He had his tattoo pen poised, didn't he?
Yeah, I know. Well, Albon's fortune was Ricciardo's misfortune in many ways, I suppose.
That's the game.
Still, he wasn't fast enough. Perez drove well, I suppose. Yeah, he kept on. He sort of went round and round and round. Landon Norris, just going through the finishes, Landon Norris, he was okay. I mean, he climbed up positions. He missed everything happening in front of him. Danny Kvyat, well, then you go down to the people who continue just going round and round and round, missing accidents. Leclerc, 8th. Oh, good grief. And Sebastian Vettel, 10th. Just amazing. Poor old George Russell. I felt sorry for him because he stuffed up his last start.
Yeah.
And he would have got a point for Williams. I mean, and it would have been a little bit ironic that Williams' first point would have been the first race after the Williams family pulled out, which is another sad thing. I know it's happened a couple of 3 weeks ago, but we're going to feel the repercussions of that for a long time simply because there's no Williams family involved. It's a very sad thing for old farts like me who sort of grew up with the Williams family in Formula One. So all in all, I thought it was a quite bizarre race.
What do we make of the Perez move, considering he was under contract and now he's looking for a job?
Could you just please explain the concept of contract to me, David?
It's a piece of paper that you're given by someone and you sign on the bottom of it, and supposedly it becomes a legal document, but really it's just a piece of paper with your name on the bottom of it.
But it depends how much that contract is valued in US dollar terms when the contract is torn up, because I'm sure Perez ain't going to be poor for an awful long time.
But we debated it for a long time, was the Stroll family factor going to come into play? Well, of course it was,
Yeah.
But is Perez a better peddler than Stroll Jr.?
I think so.
But is he a better peddler than Vettel?
Yes.
Vettel?
No, it's
yes.
But the die's set now, and now it's a case of where, he may go. And, obviously we're going to talk about IndyCar later on because I've got a few murmurs of things there, but it just seems a shame that it played itself out that way and so suddenly as well. And Chico sort of had a fairly rough year with the COVID thing and then this. But again, that's the brutality of the sport at that level, isn't it? And that's just the way the game gets played.
Well, no one's owed anything, are they?
No.
Nobody.
Well, you're owed a contract. If you sign a contract,
What's
really.
What's a contract again, David?
It's a piece of paper with it. But, in all honesty, and I know Lawrence Stroll, he told it to many of us down here, he will do anything for his son to be a Formula One driver and a very successful Formula One driver, anything at all. And that's what he was saying in Toyota Racing Series. I actually think from his son's point of view, it wouldn't have been a bad idea for his son to go to another team for a couple of years. To get, there's always going to be this mantle around him that he's only there because of a very rich father, which is probably true in many ways. He wouldn't have been there unless his father had bought. Well, he might have been there, but anyway, it's beside the point. Wouldn't it have been a good idea from his own point of view, his own mental
stand on his own
satisfaction to actually go
cut
to
the
another
apron
team
strings and go and risk something?
Well, as a Formula One driver, and always come back to Racing Point or Aston Martin or wherever it was going to be at the time. I just think it would have been good to do that, and I would have loved to see Perez and Vettel in the same team. Yeah,
this interesting with Vettel. They've basically just bought the brand, haven't they? They've not bought a driver. Is that unfair? When you look at what he hasn't achieved over the last couple of years with Ferrari and his attitude around it, have they actually purchased a driver, or have they purchased a brand to help Aston Martin and to bring other sponsors along, to bring...
You can only look at a driver's worth at the moment, not from what he's being paid, but against his teammate. And frankly, Sebastian Vettel, with a new chassis, is being outdone by his teammate. Yeah. Simple as that. Every race, by miles. And, he's a 4-time world champion, for goodness sakes. You don't just forget.
He had a great car that qualified at the front and he drives well in the lead. Is that being cruel? Now we're going to lose all of our Vettel fans. I'm really sorry about that. I'm being brutal.
The big thing is he's going to have to deliver in 2021, isn't he? Racing Point / Aston Martin, they'll have to deliver, but so will Seb. And he's going to have to insert his dominance over young Stroll, because if he doesn't, then the exercise was kind of not what it should have been.
I'm plainly not the biggest fan, but I don't wish ill on him. It'd be fantastic if he
neither.
turns up next year for Aston Martin and actually says, hold on, I'm not done yet.
Yeah, and
check this out, and laid it down and went, right, there you go.
And it's
I had
great
real
for the
problems
sport.
with Scuderia because they had a terrible car. It didn't help my headspace. I had a young guy called Leclerc who was turning up, making me look stupid. So he's recalibrated, he's reset, he comes back and goes, this is why I was 4 times world champion. Ta-da!
Yep.
And even though I'm not a big fan, as I said, I think that'd be wonderful for the sport to see the resurgence of a guy like Vettel.
I agree. And this year they have been able to hide behind the fact that the Ferrari is way down on performance compared to when it was before it was investigated for the fuel and all sorts of things, and not pinning any labels there, but you know, it's pretty bloody obvious. But next season, he's got a Mercedes Mark II, which is exactly the same as a Mercedes Mark I being driven by the Mercedes team, except his is a pink one. So, you know, if he doesn't perform next year in the similar car, same engine and all the rest of it as the Mercedes team, then he's really going to be shown up. Going to be shown up. Because Perez clearly, and Stroll to a certain extent, were getting on comparable terms with Mercedes very often in speed terms. Maybe not race results, but speed terms.
I guess for the next part of it, Kiwi things, F2, F3?
Yeah, well,
and
F2,
why not?
Yeah.
F3 is, we should talk about F2, but F3 has been possibly my favourite category so far this year. I've really enjoyed all the races I've watched.
Really favourite in the last race, but yeah, Formula 2. Unfortunately, Marcus Armstrong did well in qualifying in the first race, but unfortunately, again, he didn't manage to convert that. There's a major disconnect, I think, somewhere between Marcus, his engineer, the car, the tyres, and something going on, because his teammate, Lundgaard, you know, he's way more competitive than Marcus. So
and Marcus is a competitive driver.
And Marcus is a competitive driver. Even when he qualifies well, he slips back. And there's got to be some sort of disconnect going on there. And especially now when, you know, they've got another 2 rounds left, I think it is. So or maybe 3 rounds left, 9 races, whatever it is. I don't know. They've got to, something's got to be figured out, because Ferrari are choosing their drivers for next year at the moment. That's what they do. So he's got to stay on that train. Otherwise, he's going to fall off.
Well, it could be a huge year for him as far as judging of character.
Yeah.
And you go through ups and downs in all manner of work that you have. And when you have a year like that where it just doesn't work, how strong are you? How good's your spine? How good's your attitude? Do you sulk and walk off, Sebastian? Or do you...
No.
I've got to stop this. Well, and it's pivotal for a guy like Armstrong, who really has had a pretty storied career so far, has he not?
It is. He is a fast driver.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But so there is, as I say, some disconnect going on. That is something isn't working, and it's he needs to change. So going on to Formula 3, I can only go as far as the last race I saw in Formula 3, where Liam Lawson started and he finished, and there ain't nobody behind him. He
gave it to Hamilton, didn't he? He just drove away. Bye, have your accident back there, I'm over here. See you later.
But it's interesting that he said something after the race, that they knew they just got to throw everything at it, because he was out of the championship by that point. He lost the championship, or the possibility of being involved in the championship lead
very
in the first
early
race.
in the season.
Yeah. Well, no, in the first race. That's all, because he was still in the points block of being able to get there. Mathematically, yes, was way away. But once that race was done, that was all there was to it. So in the sprint race, they decided to change major things on the car and go in a different direction. And it was a bloody rocket. It really was. He drove incredibly well. Yes, I know you can drive well from pole position when nobody's challenging you, but he had to get away from them. Then he had to do all those laps, 21 laps, inch perfect. And that's what he did. Yeah. And at speed, great speed. So
I'm still impressed by the volume of cars in F3 this year. You know, like if you're in that mid-pack area, you're really, really earning your keep just as much as you are at the front. But it's been brilliant racing.
It's a driver's category, isn't it?
And it's the development of the sport at that, you know, that pathway, shall we say.
Yeah.
So it's been great, you know, and great to our Kiwi guys. You know, they've done themselves proud. Regardless of where they've finished, they've still done themselves proud, because they're competing against the world's best at that level, and they're there. So good on them.
And what's been a pretty dramatic year for all concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to wrap it up, really, in the 2 races, Liam was 10th, which gave him pole position from the feature race onto the other race. and then he won, obviously. But the championship was won by an Australian called Piastri, and good on him for doing it. He got there in the end. The race was screwed up a little bit for the other challengers because poor old Sargent, the American driver, he was knocked off basically at the famous turn 1-2 complex. But nonetheless, Piastri won, Pourchaire second, Sargent third, Vesti, and then fifth was Lawson on 143 points, with the winner Piastri on 164.
Well, that was part of that drama in that race, though, wasn't it? This Piastri and Pourchaire situation about where they're going to finish and how they're going to finish and who's going to get in their way. So they pretty much forgot about Lawson because he was so far up the road. Yeah, you just lost all shots of them. But that's where the action was, and I do enjoy that in coverage of motorsport. Go where the fun is. Go where the action is. As much as I want to see in New Zealand to do well, this fight here, and we may see these guys battling again in F2 and again in F1. And that timeline that we see throughout these minor categories up into the top category, and you have that the same with IndyCar as well. It's fascinating watching that story.
Yeah, I agree. I really do enjoy watching Formula 2 and Formula 3. Not many people have mentioned it, but have you noticed that the Formula 2 have gone to the 18-inch wheels this year? I think I mentioned it before. Much bigger wheels instead of 13-inch.
I've got used to them now.
Which is,
I quite like it.
That's what I was going to say. Suddenly I'm thinking to myself at the weekend, I'm not even noticing them anymore. Well, that's what Formula One's going to use.
From F1 down to your local car that you go to the shops, and you can never have too big a rim. I'm sorry, ever.
So just wrapping that up, though, Mark Fogarty from Auto Action, one of our guests on the show, if you're listening to this or watching this, yes, that was an Australian driver that actually won something.
Yeah, and good on him for doing it. He won the You don't win a championship without winning a championship. You don't get lucked into it.
Every now and then an Australian might win as well, but that's just
there are a couple of Australians in there as well.
Yeah, same in IndyCar, but we'll deal with them soon.
One Australian's enough for me, thanks.
Well, we will go to IndyCar shortly with David Turner. Bob McMurray, you can chime in as well. I'm sure I'll have a crack too. You're on the Racing World podcast again. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, subscribe and like. That is on the YouTube channel. It's really key for us to carry on doing this. You can do Radio Public. You can have a look at Spotify, and there's Anchor FM as well. Subscribe and like. You'll help us out heaps. This is the Racing World podcast. Perspective Group is a leading media production company based in Auckland, New Zealand. Established in 2009 by former TVNZ producer David Turner, Perspective Group offers you a vast arrangement of media options to fit any size or budget. It covers truly global services supported by some of New Zealand's leading media talents. For more information, contact Perspective Group Limited at perspectivegroupltd@gmail.com and check out the website perspectivegroupltd.com, where you'll find even more information on creating your media solutions.
You have a dream. You have all the drive in the world. You have talent to burn. Now all you need is a chance. Toyota are committed to developing and nurturing New Zealand's next generation of world-class racing drivers, because if you can dream it, we can do it.
Welcome back to the Racing World podcast. Our focus now is on IndyCar and what should have been almost possibly, when you consider the history that Scott Dixon has, it should have been almost the victory lap, the two races before the end of the season to say, I've got this. And Scott Dixon, well, he turned into me behind the wheel, didn't he? Quite frankly, we shouldn't laugh about that. That was a tough weekend for Scott Dixon, but you've got to be impressed by, especially in race 2, the way he picked himself up, buckled himself up, and came back to finish within cooey of Joseph Newgarden. So let's start from the start, though. What did you see at Mid-Ohio? Because that was strange.
Well, they just kind of never really hit their straps, all weekend. The number 9 car just didn't do what we expect it to do at Mid-Ohio. When you look at the fact that Scott is the winningest most driver at Mid-Ohio of any active IndyCar driver
6.
Right now. 6, yeah. So I guess we all went into the weekend going, well, there's another win coming. And it just didn't happen. But again, that's the nature of the game, isn't it? And the competition is that tough and it's that competitive. The good part about it is some of those people that did get big points this weekend aren't quite in the championship scenario, so it's softened the blow a little bit. But it also shows you that you have to be very, very careful in that championship. Just like any other championship, you might have a big points lead one day and it can be eroded the next day. But hey, there's still 3, maybe 2 races to go, so game on.
So he qualified very, very poorly for the opening race. And was this tyre based? What was this?
Just
for a place he calls his own, it was odd.
They did say tyre a little bit, but I don't know. It just didn't click. And I guess if you're a team like that, you've got to put that behind you and now focus on IMS, where they go back to the road course there and go, right, well, we've got to get this right because we've won there earlier this year, and get on with it. You know, the big thing with this year's championship, even though it's been up and down and all over the place, Scott has actually led it from day one, and that hasn't really been done in recent years. So there's still a lot of pressure on to convert this into, championship title number 6. So very interesting.
If they've got 3 races left, that's a possible
150 points.
No, more than that. 159. It's a possible 159, and Scott currently leads by 62. So once again, as long as he's in the top 5
10s,
or 6
top 10s will do it.
points,
It's still 20-odd points for a top 10.
Or whatever happens, if he finishes in front of Newgarden, he's looking good.
Well, that's an essential. It's not really where he finishes, where he finishes in relation to Newgarden. That's got to be the key thing for him. He can't. Well, I heard in the interview afterwards, are you going to now settle? You've got this half-decent lead, and he goes, no, sir.
Well, you can't.
We've got to carry on winning. We've had this discussion before. I must keep winning. You get to the last race, suddenly you can actually race for the points, can you not? Or no, you don't like this idea, do you? You want to run and just keep trying winning. But there's got to come a stage at the end in the last race. If we get to Florida, or maybe the last race, the second race, the IMS, I'm going to have to drive for points here because where's Newgarden? I've got to follow him.
The only thing you're going to do, I think,
is cause trouble.
It's the same in any series anywhere. Is if you get to the last race and your championship depends on you getting points, you're still in the race. You cannot plan to be 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. You're still going to try and win the race. All you're going to do is maybe pull out of a 50-50 situation unless that situation is 60-40 in your favour.
Which is what Scott wasn't doing in race 2 at Mid-Ohio when he was going to charge his way from the back of the field. That was crazy.
He openly admitted he did do that at Indy up against Sato, where he said he could have gone a bit deeper, but he backed off knowing the fact that that was a safer bet to do. That's also the hallmark of a championship driver, even though it was the Indy 500. I think right now the big thing is that they know they're going to go back to IMS, 2 races there. We know we can run there with all the COVID hoo-ha. We don't still know fully about St. Pete. Come what may, you must be leading when you leave IMS in case there isn't a St. Pete.
Yeah, have you heard any more about that?
No.
It's all gone very quiet as far as I can tell. I mean, is Florida still in?
They're all talking about it, so they're assuming that it's going to happen. But I can't understand why it would necessarily happen because of it being a temporary circuit. If it was a permanent circuit, then you go, okay, sure, it's going to happen. But, time will tell.
We all saw that spin.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We haven't even talked about the elephant in the room yet with the rookie error, and he straight away fessed up to that. He goes, I don't believe I feel so bad for the rest of my... It was bizarre.
I can't remember seeing him make a spin like that, not in the last 4 or 5 years anyway. So, it wasn't a pressured spin or anything. He said he put the overtake button on while the wheel was on the curb or slightly on the dirt, and that spun him around. And then he couldn't get it back going again because.
And then he drove through a swamp.
And he nearly got stuck. I mean, that thing slowed.
It did.
And started again. So he came all the way from last.
You know how there's no luck in motorsport, right, Bob?
No.
When you spin at that speed in that area with all those cars behind you, pretty lucky you didn't get collected by someone, right?
So you're telling a 5-time IndyCar champion he was lucky. That wasn't his skill in any way, shape, or form. He was like, okay.
He lost control of the car and he span around, and there was cars right up. I'm sitting there with bated breath, going, "No!" Oh, he's only in the mud. No! But the drive back was incredible. Watching him come back through the field again, so exciting.
If you think back, classic Dixon, and this is why he is a 5-time champion. A few years back at Portland, when he got caught in that first turn at Portland, championship was up to stake, and he was buried in the dirt for probably ever. He had the sensibility to dip the clutch, keep the engine running, came out, went on. 2 weeks later, he won a championship. That's the smarts of a driver, rather than someone who goes, "Oh, well, I've spun it, I'll give up." So I just think that says a lot about why he becomes a 5-time champion.
But there's also this fact they kept bringing up throughout both the races at Mid-Ohio, saying that Scott has never won the championship when he has won at Mid-Ohio. Is that true? If it is true,
it's an American
looking good.
stats thing. Look, a win's a win, people. You know, so but lots of things going on in IndyCar since we last all met. So the first one, I've got news for you. I've got this. It arrived in the mail. Indy 500 limited edition cap. But here's the quirk, people. Here's the quirk, and I think it's either going to have lots of commercial value later on, or I've just bought a lemon. It's dated May 24th, 2020.
Oh.
The race that never actually happened.
There you go.
That is cool.
It's like my Michael Schumacher world champion.
So there we go. So we've got that. And
that looks like Salvation Army on the back.
No, it's not.
It
It's
looks
the
like
numbered
Salvation
edition.
Army. Look.
It has merit. So we'll see. But anyway, that goes in the collection. The big thing that has started with IndyCar is the rumours of drivers going here, there and everywhere. So I did a bit of research over the last couple of days. And some of the key teams, AJ Foyt currently have no drivers signed for 2021. So Charlie Kimball and Dalton Kennett, they may or may not end up back there. Obviously, TK's supposedly finished.
Is he having another farewell tour?
He's having another farewell.
I thought so.
Then you start to look at the big teams. So, and this is where it gets interesting. All the drivers at Ganassi, including Scott, don't have contracts for next year. And there was even a comment on Racer the other day saying, I wonder if they'll re-sign Dixon. Well, of course they will. You know, Chip's not that stupid.
As opposed to whom?
But the other two could
Jimmy
be interesting.
Johnson?
So, you know, the business manager for all three of those drivers, Stefan Johansson, who we both know, he's got a bit of work to do to get those contracts over the line. Jimmy Johnson at Ganassi next year for road courses, almost certainly.
He's got to pay the money, though, isn't he?
Yeah, but that'll happen.
Shouldn't be difficult.
It'll come with money. Temptation of him to do the 500, I think, is ramping up, but they've already linked TK to that drive as well, saying that maybe Kanaan will drive the car for the 500 and Jimmy will do the road courses. But I think there might be that lure of wanting to do the 500, so that'll be interesting. Andretti Autosport, the only signed driver under contract so far for next year is Alexander Rossi. The other three, which is Hunter Ray, Veach, and good old Marco, don't have deals for next year yet, so they've got a bit of homework to do. Then we get to the big one. Penske, the only driver there signed for next year is Newgarden. So Mr. Pagenaud and Mr. Power, they got to do something. And then the big rumour there is the fact that it'll be a four-car squad next year, and driver number 4, we kind of all know who that's going to be. That'll be a Kiwi guy by the name of Scott McLaughlin, not Dixon.
Word around him actually tearing off to maybe compete at St. Pete's?
Yeah, they've said that they will prepare a car, but the logistics of getting from Bathurst through quarantine and into St. Pete with the time frame they've got doesn't work. So I'm not quite sure how
he's
that'll
good,
play
but
it
he's
out.
not that good.
They've clearly indicated that something will happen. It's just a case of when. So, you know, the merry-go-round started already with those bigger teams. Some of the smaller teams like Dale Coyne actually have Ferrucci and Alex Pliar kind of under contract already for next year. What's the value of a contract? But, you know, so there's plenty going on, and the season hasn't finished yet. And traditionally, this weekend would have been where the season finished. So due to COVID, we're obviously carrying on. So in terms of competition for things for television space, only in the US, we're saying here, massive, because American football started now, ice hockey started, the NBA is still going, baseball's still going. It's huge. So, you know, IndyCar's going into territory that it hasn't done before in terms of television rating points. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. Other big one from the weekend at Mid-Ohio, Hunter McElroy on the podium again. Had a good race, had a bad race, won in the wet. But, you know, another good performance for him. It's going to be a case of championship got away from him a little early on and couldn't claw it back. But, you know, still just like Marcus and Liam in Europe doing a great job.
And this is the US Pro 2000 Championship, which is that's pretty good. That's a lead up to an IndyCar drive.
So I think Hunter's done a good job this year. It's just been a harder year, but sometimes I think that comes when you've had a semi-dream year the year before. You've got to have, you know, something that's probably a little bit more crappy the following year to harden you up and make you more hungry for it. And he's certainly hungry for it. So good job. Just
going back to Scott, just to say that with the points as it is at the moment, we talk about Scott and Newgarden, but there are other drivers who could win the championship.
Yep.
In fact, quite a few.
Yes.
Scott's up there on 456 points. Joseph Newgarden 62 behind. Then Pat O'Ward, the McLaren etc., driver. I mean, there's got so many names in that team. He's 118 behind. Then you get Colton Herta, Will Power, Takuma Sato, all of whom are mathematically possible championship winners. But in practice, the way championship points go, or the race points go in Indy, probably none of them are actually really in contention, I would say. Yeah. Maybe they are.
I think race 1 at IMS will be quite critical to how some of that
It's
plays
going to be bloody
itself
cold
out.
there as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
October?
it'll be cooler than normal. And that run to the first turn, this year was the first year that we hadn't had an accident there. So, now that they're going back, they can have another go. Yeah. The only other driver in that whole driver scenario for next year that's unsigned at the moment is Mr. Sato. He doesn't have a deal with Rahals at the moment, but Bobby has said we want him back. So
IndyCar winner,
Indy 500 winner.
That will happen.
It'd be a tough call, wouldn't it? When the Indy 500 get dropped. What's on a contract day?
It's quite exciting times ahead. But
F1, F2, F3, IndyCar and across. We've got other categories running on the weekend as well, haven't we, Bob? You had a good look at that.
Well, keeping on four wheels. Yeah, there was quite a lot going on. Keeping on four wheels, NASCAR Richmond, they're into their playoff series and all that sort of thing. Brad Keselowski won that race, in fact, dominated it. He said he was going to. This was at Richmond last weekend. 400 laps of Richmond. My God, you get kidding. It's not that big a place. Truex Jr., Joey Logano, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott. That's going to warm up as the races go on because they're going to start eliminating some people. At Super GT with Nick Cassidy out there. Not quite so quick was Nick. They finished sixth, him and Ryo Hirakawa. In the Tom's Toyota. And, there was I didn't actually see the race. Sometimes I try and watch it on live, but he's in the championship. He's on 43 points, which puts him, let's see, third overall, just trying to run through. And also we go to two wheels. We had, believe it or not, a Moto GP at San Marino. It's at Misano, Italy. I remember going there a while ago as well, and that's a lovely track for bikes. I wouldn't want to put cars around there. Not Formula One cars, anyway. I think the biggest thing you can take out of that race was not only was it exciting. I mean, how can a bloody MotoGP race not be exciting? It's just fantastic. Franco Morbidelli won it from Francesco Bagnaia. Joan Mir Suzuki was third, only just from Valentino Rossi, who was second so long in the race. He was just second for almost every lap apart from the last two or three, which was fantastic. He has said that he regrets starting the Rossi 46 farm that he has to promote drivers because his drivers beat him. And his riders beat him. So there you go. Alex Rins was fifth, Maverick Vinales sixth, Dovizioso seventh, Jack Miller was eighth. He's having a really good season for his first proper season out there on the Ducati. So the point situation now, Dovizioso 76, Quartararo 70, Jack Miller 64, Joan Mir 60, Vinales 58, even with Valentino Rossi on 58. And none of this would be the same if Marc Marquez was back, and he's still not back. He's still, pretty sure he's out for another month, but I don't know. He had a fairly big break in his arm, his wrist, or whichever bit of bone he hasn't broken before. He probably has anyway.
And then finally, we have Motorsport. Well, we've had some anyway, but Motorsport back on track in New Zealand. And Hampton Downs this weekend. You're going to be out there. I'm going to be out there.
I'm going to be there.
A non-championship Toyota 86 race.
This is my daughter's 10th birthday. I will not be out there. I'm sure you understand.
He wants to experiment the tin can and piece of string.
Oh,
wouldn't you actually, your daughter would love going to a motor race meeting? No, probably not.
Final round, which is a championship round for Ryko 24/7 Utes, and then, of course, the endurance races, which kicked off last weekend in the South Island with a blinding finish, 0.587 of a second separating first and second at the end, between the all-new Aston Martin entry out of the IMS stable and then Johnny Reed and Co. also out of the IMS stable in an Audi. So great great Saturday of motorsport at Hampton Downs as part of the Speedworks events program.
And as you would have seen from the runner, is that what we call it? The ticker at the bottom of the screen. That's the thing. The ticker at the bottom of the screen. Next weekend on the international scene, the Le Mans 24 Hours. I mean, that's crept up on me like crazy. So we'll see Brendan Hartley in that. We've got the supercars start their, is it their third race from the end? Whatever it is, because we've got the last one at Bathurst, and then these 2 races at the
Tail and Bend.
Bend.
And it's due to be an announcement this week about what they're going to do with crowd at Bathurst.
Yeah,
so by next
right.
week we'll be able to tell everyone about that.
And they're all sponsored now by, or going to be sponsored by, good old Repco instead of Super Cheap. It's gone. So once again, we've got the Indy Pro League with Laguna Seca with Hunter McElroy. NASCAR at Bristol, which is even smaller. The FIA WRC round, that's happening in Europe, somewhere around Turkey this coming weekend. German touring cars, the Nürburgring. British Touring Car Championship with Dick Bennett, who we must get on, because he is leading, him or his drivers or his team are leading every single championship involved with the British Touring Car Championship generally. Every marker he's at the top of. British Formula 3 at Donington, Moto GP at Emilia-Romagna circuit, which is Imola. And then Formula 1's going there soon as well. World Superbikes at Catalunya. No Formula 1 this weekend, which is
Shock
a
horror.
relief, to be honest.
Wow.
And national events, as you say, and these are all subject to change because we don't know what COVID are doing. Autocross, Duckman Day, Wairarapa, Drift South, Mike Piro Motorsport Park, Golden Homes, North Island Endurance Series, as you were talking about, with the 86s there and utes and things like that. ITM Winter Series at Taupo Motorsport Park. Kakariki Gravel Autocross at Manawatu, Quinn Road Interclub Hill Climb Coromandel, Southland Sports Car Motorcana at Terratonga, and Transpec GT Oil Manfield Open Day at Manfield Auto Course. Get along. Support motorsport.
Who needs a crowd?
However, I will have to say that the event at Hampton that we're going to be at is a no crowd event. So
it's a no crowd
get along,
event.
but don't get along.
Yeah, and it's only Friday, Saturday anyway.
However, there is a live stream of that event, and there also is a TV package for all 3 categories that are there. So you'll be able to see that on a free-to-air network.
So basically that is for competitors, not for you, the public,
just
to go along and have a look.
So don't get hunted down by Dr. Jeffrey Bloomfield or anything like that.
Jeffrey?
No, Ashley, sorry.
Ashley.
I've got Jeffrey
Sharp
on the
as a
brain
marble, we all are here at the Racing World podcast. And that, I believe, is it for us.
It'll do me.
Yep.
It'll do you as well.
Too right.
Remember to subscribe and to like, especially if you're on YouTube. If you're across the other platforms, do the same for us so we can continue to bring you Racing World, Anchor FM. We've got Radio Public and Spotify as well. Thanks very much for listening, indeed watching the podcast. We'll be back again next week here at Racing World.
And throw a comment into or two as well. Let us know what you think or what you don't think about it.
Yeah, so Mr. Zemansky, when you're watching this in your cafe in New York, we wait for your comments. Thanks very much.
And Fogarty, no, we don't want you to comment at all. It's the last thing we need.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Race Control Magazine is your IndyCar fan mag and so much more. Publishing monthly online on issuu.com, you'll find Race Control Magazine there for you to download and enjoy everything IndyCar and so much more. Behind-the-scenes features, race reports and the entire Road to Indy series are just part of what you will find, along with stunning images captured from the series' leading photographers. Grab your copy today at issw.com to complete your motorsport read.
You have a dream. You have all the drive in the world. You have talent to burn. Now all you need is a chance. Toyota are committed to developing and nurturing New Zealand's next generation of world-class racing drivers, because if you can dream it, we can do it.
Racing World is presented by Race Control Magazine.